Ways to use has to. As you learn our initial lesson how to use have to with plural statements, now we are going to study with singular statements we use has to. Let's get started. Ways to use has to. The words has to describe something that needs to take place soon. It expresses certainty, necessity or obligation. Means it is necessary for you to do when it comes to an action. The way we are going to form the sentence by using singular he or she plus has to plus verb phrase. She has to plus phrase. She has to learn English. She has to learn English to get a better job, or you can say she has to learn English to be a teacher. The phrases you have to learn: she has to cook the meals. He has to write a letter. My mother, here is singular, my mother. My mother has to ask a question from teacher. You can use many sentences, but here we are going to teach you few of the phrases. Let's get started. Has to with positive statements. Example, stage 1. She has to cook the meals. He has to cook the meals. My mother has to cook the meals. Singular, my mother, singular. So we use has to. My friend has to cook the meals. Also singular. Has to with negative statements. Example, stage 1. Here the negative sentence we use with does not have to or doesn't have to. She doesn't have to cook the meals. He doesn't have to cook the meals. My mother doesn't have to cook the meals. My friend doesn't have to cook the meals. Has to with interrogative statements and short answers. Example, stage 1. Does she have to cook the meals? Yes, she does. Does he have to cook the meals? No, he doesn't. Does my mother have to cook the meals? Yes, she does. Does your friend have to cook the meals? No, he doesn't. Or you can say, if your friend is a girl, no, she doesn't. Has to with positive statements. Example, stage 2. She has to write a letter. He has to write a letter. My mother has to write a letter. My friend has to write a letter. Has to with negative statements. Example, stage 2. Does not have to, or you can use the short form doesn't have. She doesn't have to write a letter. He doesn't have to write a letter. My mother doesn't have to write a letter. My friend doesn't have to write a letter. Has to with interrogative statements and short answers. Does she have to write a letter? Yes, she does. Does he have to write a letter? No, he doesn't. Does your mother have to write a letter? Yes, she does, or you can use yes, my mother does. Does your friend have to write a letter? Yes, he does when it comes to the boy. If you have a friend is girl, you can use yes, she does. Has to with positive statements. Example, stage 3. She has to ask a question from teacher. He has to ask a question from teacher. My mother has to ask a question from teacher, singular. My friend has to ask a question from teacher, also singular. Has to with negative statements. Example, stage 3. Does not have to, or you can use the short form doesn't have to. She doesn't have to ask a question from teacher. He doesn't have to ask a question from teacher. My mother doesn't have to ask a question from teacher, singular. My friend doesn't have to ask a question from teacher, also singular. Has to with interrogative statements and short answers. Example, stage 3. Does she have to ask a question from teacher? Yes, she does. Does he have to ask a question from teacher? No, he doesn't. Does my mother have to ask a question from teacher? Yes, she does. Does your friend have to ask a question from teacher? No, he doesn't. In this video, we cover how to use has to. Has to we mostly use with the singular form. So you can use she as a singular, he as a singular, or any other person when you use as a one. Does my mother is singular. So we use does my mother. Thank you very much for listening to this very short video. Make sure you like, share and subscribe so you will never miss another video like this. Stay with us, learn how to learn.